Carlin, would you give an indication today?
Lord, we thank you so much for giving us the freedom and the ability to come together and work together for the better of our community. We pray that you would guide our steps in everything that we do. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Yeah.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Does anybody have any changes to the agenda? None, I would make a motion that it be approved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. No unfinished business. We'll go to the 2018 audit report from Chris Holliday.
That's it, table.
Yes, please.
I don't know if I'd sit next to them.
And, Chairman, Commissioners, thank you for having us back to do your audit again this year. I'll say the audit went very smooth. Sam did a great job getting us everything as always, and timely. We were just trying to get to a presentation day. I had a little vacation there and trying to get, so but everything was submitted on time at the end of June and the state, so we're in good shape for that regard. So this is the end result of the audit. This big, thick, blue bound financial statements with all kinds of note disclosures in here and a lot of reading here. We're gonna just hit the highlights and stay in this presentation right here. And so as I'm flipping through this presentation, you can I'll try to remember to call out the page numbers here in the bottom right hand corner so we can stay on the same page. But as we work through the audit, you know, there's many reasons that you have an audit, but the main goal of an audit on the financial statements is to give the reader of these financial statements for us to give an opinion on the numbers, so that a reader of the financial statements can see that a third party has audited these financial statements and know that they can rely upon the numbers. Okay. So we've issued a 3-page letter in there, which is called our audit opinion. And even though we assist in preparation of these financial statements, to make sure they're in proper form, and we work with management to adjust numbers where they need to be, the numbers are the county's responsibility. So even at the end of the audit, the county accepts responsibility for those, any adjustments and approval of those that are made. And so we're giving an opinion, and we've given what in our profession is referred to as an unmodified opinion, in my own terms, a clean opinion, just like we've always received. On slide 3, so in the bound report, on pages 9, 10, and 11, I'm going to pull some numbers out of those 2 reports. There's the statement of net position and the statement of activities. And I know every month Sandy gives you a financial package, you know, where you're looking at budget actual and you're keeping up with how each department's doing, and you're looking by funds. You know, you're looking at, say, general fund and some of your other funds. But when we pull this report together, and you only see this one time a year, we're required to present all funds together in a statement of net position and statement of activity, sort of like a balance sheet and income statement for the county, where you can see everything consolidated, full accrual accounting, rather than modified budget basis like the general fund have been. So on slide 4, we're going to pull a few numbers out of that. And when we talk about the statement of net position, and there's really 3 main sections of that. You think about just like maybe your home financials. You know, you think about your assets, everything the county owns, including all capital items, cash, receivables. Then you have your liabilities, everything that the county owes. Okay. Then the net of those, you want to be positive, of course. You want everything you own, everything you're invested in to be more than you owe, for sure. And that is referred to as net position, okay? So we've got total net position, and there's three categories. The first three number columns there of net position. Net investment in capital assets, we'll look at the bottom row there, 2018, 31,062,153. So that's going to be all our capital items, like our land, our buildings, our roads that we have capitalized, our vehicles, our equipment, less any depreciation, accumulated depreciation we've had on those assets, less any debt that we owe on those assets is going to be that $31 million number. Then we have restricted net position. It's almost $8.4 million there. So those would be any restricted. We have several special revenue funds where restricted dollars go into those, have to be spent for a certain purpose. We also have like the SPLOST capital project fund. We have the debt service fund. Monies that go into those have to be spent for that specific purpose. And so if we have any assets in those funds, less any liabilities in those funds, gets us to the restricted net position. Then we have everything else that's left, which is really, as referred to as unrestricted, $6,568,581. That's really what we have, all funds combined, sort of like the reserves of the county, if you will. And those three numbers get to a total net position of $46,016,554. So you see that significantly from the prior year, so we've increased. That's a great thing. And then over on the right-hand column, that is a net number off the statement of activity. So that's our total revenues over our total expenses for the year, an increase of $2,098,695. You see that's a significant difference from the prior year. We'll go over when we get to the general fund here. We had significant increases in property tax revenue. We had significant increases in sales tax, both lost and splost. And then the previous year in 2017, we had a little bit extra expenses in there where we were paying for that sewer line over to the detention center. And so we didn't have those same expenses that hit in 2018. So those three things are really what caused the major difference between 17 and 18. Okay. On slide 5, we talk about the general fund. And so when I talk about things increasing or decreasing, I'm talking about 2008 compared to 2017. Okay, so our revenues in the general fund increased $1.7 million, almost 9% in total. Our property taxes increased, our motor vehicle and /TAVT tax increased, our lost increased, our insurance premium tax increased, and our intergovernmental increased as well. And intergovernmental could be reimbursements or joint ventures where other counties are paying for certain things, other governmental entities to this county. Those could be a few grants that was put in the general fund as well. And on our expenditure side, they increased $912,157, 4.7%. So not as much as the revenue, which is a great thing. And the major changes in the departments, of course, these aren't all the changes, but the most significant ones are elections and registrar increased $136,575. That was up in 18. Our sheriff department increased. Our fire department increased. Our animal control increased, and our road department increased. All those departments were major increases. And then we look at unassigned fund balance. So similar to net position I went over, fund balance would be our assets minus our liabilities in the general fund would equal our fund balance. A good place to be, we usually say we like to see our governments in the 3 to 4 month minimum fund balance range. You're at 3.3 months, $5.6 million in unassigned. Okay? So what that means is you have $5.6 million of unassigned fund balance that carries forward to the next year that you could use for various projects. You could use to help balance the budget if you needed to. You try to keep from doing that, of course, because you really want to stay at this 3 months if you can, and maybe really try to increase that a little bit as well. So, but it can be used for various things. There also is, that's not total fund balance, so some of fund balance might be restricted or committed or, assigned for various other things, but that would be your unassigned right there. On slide 6, so here we can see a 5-year trend of our revenues and our expenditures. So if you look at 2018 to the far right, so our revenues for the year were $21.1 million, and our expenditures were $20,356,000. Okay, that's you see we got back. It's hard to tell on 2017 that higher number is actually expenses. So we had more expenditures there in 2017, just slightly more than we had revenue. So we got back on the right side there in 2018. But you can see where we've come from, and from 2014, our total revenues have gone from $17.4 million up to $21.1 million in that 5-year period.
Chris, prior years, I don't know how many years back, we did not keep a capital budget or capital funds, but this does not have anything affected from year to year different, is there, for the general fund here? Because we used to have a lot of things, I think, showed up in the general fund.
Capital in here?
Even.
Yeah. For the most part.
So is it apples to apples, year to year? That's what I'm asking. Pretty much.
For at least the last 3 or 4 years, I know it has been that way. It's apples to apples.
Okay.
All the way back to 14, I would have to check, but I would say it probably is from, since we've been doing the audit, for the most part, you haven't run very much capital through the general fund. I mean, you have some. It's been in another fund where SPLOST is paying for it or something like that. So, for the most part, not in its entirety, but for the most part, from these, probably all 5 years here, we don't have much capital sitting in the general fund. Okay.
Good.
On slide 7, you look at our unassigned fund balance. So I can remember for sure when we had fund balance much less than 3 months. And you can see back to how we have increased this unassigned fund balance from 2014 up to 2018. So we've gone from $3.8 million up to 5.6. Of course, our budget's gone up a little bit too. I'd have to look back to see what 14 was in a number of months, but this is a good trend to see this. And you look at your unassigned, from 17 to 18, we've increased it, almost $300,000. Okay, on slide 8, so I mentioned one letter in there, opinion letter on the financial statements. So we also issue a report. It's not really an opinion, but it's a report on internal control and other matters. We're under government auditing standards, so we're required to do a little bit more work in looking at your internal controls and looking at your compliance with any debt agreements. You've got those various bond issuance, and David and I work back and forth and compliance, questions I may have coming through the audit on those, also state laws that we're looking at, making sure compliance in those. And we're looking for the material ones, certainly we're not looking at every single small one, but this letter here on page 91 through 93, and we can turn to the blue book here if we want to look at those comments. And so we really think just have one additional comment here. So we end up with three comments. The first two, number 1 and number 2, are I think both of those were in there the prior year. Number 1, although Sandy does a great job on the day-to-day, when you have a small finance staff, it's very difficult to keep up with, and I'm going to go over in the next few slides about all the changes coming that GASB keeps putting out, governmental reporting, and hard to keep up with those, making sure we have everything in here basically could Sandy prepare the report without us and it be presented to the state, you know, without a lot of comments back and things like that. So we really assist with that. That's comment number one, what that's referring to. We see that a lot of times in many of our small governments. Comment number two, I believe was also there the prior year in planning and zoning. We just need to deposit our money more timely. Now, I know there's not money, maybe not, you might say, well, there's maybe not a lot of money there, and we're holding it till we get enough to accumulate to deposit. But as a good control, you want to get that money out of the hands of anybody at the county and over to the bank. Because anytime you have money for any length of time, that creates more opportunity for things to happen that shouldn't be taking place. So I know there's not accumulation of a lot there, but we need to just be depositing a little more time. On comment number three, right near the end of the year, we had the SPOS deposit that electronically goes into the general fund. Sandy would always move that over to the SPOS fund when it would come in immediately. That didn't happen right at year end, and so when we got the numbers, the money was still sitting, the SPOS was sitting in the general fund. That's just an automatic trigger. We've worked with Sandy to now change that where that deposit goes directly in that SPOS bank account, which it really should. And so that's what that comment number three there. All three of these, there was a corrective action submitted to the Department of Audit just in response, basically saying, see our responses we already have here. All right, any question on those? Back to our slide presentation now. So I'm going to talk about some future changes because I think it's just it's always good, even though Sandy may be the one mostly dealing with this. I think you need to always be aware of what's changing in the reporting, what always keeps her hopping as part of her job and keeping up with and changes that we really don't have a lot of control of. You know, the Governmental Accounting Standards Board sets new policies and new rules all the time, and so we've got the first one here. We would have mentioned this to you, I believe, last year too, on leases. So right now we have, and that'll be effective for 2020, but you know, that's just right around the corner. When we get to January or so, at least by then, we'll be helping Sandy get ready probably this fall, at least the first of the year, to start trying to identify what those leases are we need to be looking at. So right now, the way the standards are is we have two basic type of leases. So if you go out and get a lease, say where you're going to purchase a few new sheriff department patrol cars, okay, those leases are normally written where you will own those vehicles at the end of the lease. That's referred to a capital lease. As opposed to some of the leases you have now for some other vehicles like through Enterprise and those rental vehicles, or if you're renting your copiers, things like that, where you're not necessarily going to own the vehicle once you finish with the payments. You might have an option to purchase it at the end of the lease for fair market value. Those are more operating leases. So we have two buckets right now. The operating leases, the payments on those stay all in the expenditure. Like I said, if we're making those in the general fund, they stay in the expenditure. Okay. For your capital leases, when we create and put those up on the balance sheet, those are assets of the county because we're gonna own those, and then we have the debt. Okay. Well, under this new lease, all leases will now become like the capital ones. They will all now go on the balance sheet, if you will. Now, it matters in difference of accounting method. So in the general fund, we don't really carry our capital amounts on there. We don't carry our debt there. They are put up on those two statements that I referred to. We went over the first thing that said we only see those one time a year on that statement net position. But it will affect how we are accounting for some of those things. So now when you look at a statement net position, you will now see all those you would see all those enterprise leases, you would see any of those maybe copier leases or other material leases we have, all end up on as an asset and liability. Okay? So even though we may not own them, we now have a new asset category called right to use. We have the right to use that asset, and we have the debt related to that. So that'll be a change in 2020 on that, so have to do with it. So that means a little work on Sandy's part of just making sure we have a list of all our leases, you know, and then we decide which ones are material that we're gonna record in that nature. And then GASB 88.
Would that apply
Yes.
if we don't, I don't think, have any, if we leased a building as well?
It would, yes.
We don't have any now. Okay. If we leased office space or something that we don't. So all that's getting combined.
That's correct. But to your point, it could affect the other side of that.
Yeah,
Y'all own some buildings that you lease out.
yeah.
Okay, so we have the other side of the accounting that would change under this as well.
That would change as well.
That's correct. But, yeah, so right now we just have rental income,
Yeah,
you know, now that will change how we report some of that. Now, if you look at your fund level, anything but the golf course. The golf course is full accrual, just like the statement of net position and statement of activities is when we combine all funds. So it would follow full accrual, everything would be asset liability as far as leases. At your fund level for your, I know this is confusing, but general fund, special revenue fund, all your capital project, your debt service, they're a modified accrual based accounting. GASB likes to confuse everything. So we don't really carry those assets and liabilities on there as far as our capital items. So as far as you're comparing your budget, say in the general fund, everything would remain really the same. It's just when we consolidate up for those statement net position, statement activities that would change. So, very confusing.
Sort of all.
like the golf course, we do rent golf carts,
Mhm.
so that would change.
Yeah, and those golf carts, I don't think we've treated those as capital. I think those have been operating, I don't think we're owning those at the end. I think there's a fair market purchase, yeah. So,
I don't think we have.
so that's a good example, Dallas. So now, when we make those payments are in expenses and they stay there. Under this new, we would have a right to use of those golf carts, and they would be a capital item, and we would amortize that over the life of that lease, and then we would have a new debt that we haven't had before for the remainder value of those payments. And none of those payments, other than the interest portion of those payments, would hit your expenses. And really make your statement of revenues and expenses look better,
Yeah.
but it makes your balance sheet look different. GASB 80.
Does it matter whether they're 1 year or multi-year?
It does not matter.
Okay. Treat them all the same.
That's correct.
Okay.
GASB 88 will be effective for 2019, and there's not really anything that will change your numbers whatsoever on any of your funds. But when we get into the note disclosures, where we list out our debt and we have all these disclosed amortization schedules and the ins and outs of the debt, some of those disclosures are changing. So that'll be more of just how we're, since we're preparing the financials, how we handle those disclosures. There's other things going on too, plenty more going on, but that's the two main ones that will affect the county. There's a lot of other things going on that you just don't have. Questions, Brian?
We do appreciate the thorough job that y'all
Yes.
do.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us.
I don't really have any questions, but I would like to make a couple comments, because I think it's good news, and I think the public needs to know it, and we need to understand it. I looked at, I guess it's page 6 in this big book, the statement of activities, and did some calculations. I guess it's good news, but our property taxes increased about 12% over year to year. That can be good news or bad news, depending on whether you're paying or receiving. Sales tax was up 8.5%. That's obviously a good news item, and hotel motel was up, as I calculated, 13%. The bad news in that number, though, is I think property tax amounts to 44% of our total revenues, and that's always, to me, I'd like to see that number smaller without reducing property taxes necessarily, but I'd like to see that as a smaller percentage. And I think we're making a little progress on that, but when the taxes go up 12%, it's hard to keep up with the revenue and matching that in sales tax and things. But that's just a comment. I think total revenues I calculated was up 8%. And I think that bears out what you had indicated pretty much. The expense side, if I take public safety and judicial, we are spending 55% of our budget on those two areas. And I just don't see, and I've said this before, but I don't see how we can sustain the growth and the percentage of those areas over time. It's just not a sustainable number to put more than half of our expenses in those areas. But I don't have the best answer to solve that. Our expenses, I feel we controlled those very well this year. I think our last year, as this is reported, and that's good. We're up no more than 3%. That hardly keeps up with the cost of stuff that we deal with, and labor costs and all that. So that's a good number. Overall, that's a 5% increase in that net position, and I think that's a big positive. We need to recognize that as such. So that's the only comment I would make on those sheets. Our fund balances are good. I don't think that's a major item to worry about, and we're not so overloaded with free money that people should be concerned or complain. So I think it's
coming for a while.
Yeah. So I think it's a good story in terms of the numbers, with something we can control, and hopefully the economy will keep ourselves going that way. So I'm pleased. I'm glad that your numbers bear out what I felt was happening, and I think the public needs to know that. Thanks, Chris.
Yeah.
Well, I know Chris has got to be at another appointment, but we do thank you for
Yeah.
coming.
Thank you.
We
Thank
appreciate
y'all.
all
Thank you
your
much.
inputs.
Y'all have a good Fourth.
Thank you.
Stay ready.
Thank you.
Be
Appreciate
safe.
it. Thank you much. I will add too, I forgot, Charlie, but I think our total debt went down over $2.5 million from 17 to 18. It's going down more this year too, so that's another good number. We need to pass those around whenever we get good numbers. So.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, that's- so that brings us to citizens wishing to speak. Anybody that would like to speak on any topic?
Mr. Chairman, just a couple quick things. One, the slideshow that he presented in the blue book, can I ask for a copy
We'll
email?
get you a copy of it.
Thank you very much. Maybe I missed something in reading the media accounts on some things concerning property and the pool update. I understand you had an executive session. I just want to ask this while the county attorney's here. I was just a little confused. You had a meeting here with an executive session. I understand the county surveyor went into the executive session, and Lloyd Jarrett went into the executive session. Am I able to ask, was that session concerning the property and the surveying over there for the pool? Am I able to ask, was that the subject of that session?
David can correct me if I'm wrong. I think really all we can say is that it was regarding real estate.
Okay, but when you say regarding real estate, and that's why I want some clarification, because I asked the reporter this shortly after that. I said, when you say regarding real estate, is not executive session for real estate that you plan to purchase? Is that, and I understand why executive session, because you don't want the buyer, the seller to know what you would offer or not. That's very clear why you would have that executive session. When real estate, personnel, real estate, I get it. So let me ask the question, when the property is just going to be what I understand, a swap of the title or a property deed, a quitclaim property deed to the county, where in that, maybe the attorney would gladly answer that, because I'd like to know just for learning, where in that is executive session?
This property has not yet been purchased, and I think we would be at liberty in an executive session to discuss those items that might relate to whether or not we would like to go forward with the purchase.
So what are you saying? Are you saying that East LJ is not given the county and did not make an offer
No,
to?
no, Brian, that's not at all what I'm saying. East LJ is perfectly willing to give that. They made the offer, that hasn't changed. And that's as far as I'm gonna go.
Well, then where's the word purchase?
That's as far as I'm
Actually,
going.
it's acquisition.
Acquisition.
Wait a minute.
The title, property is not currently titled in the county's name, and the county would be acquiring it, so it's acquisition. So, yeah, the county has every opportunity to exercise its due diligence, just like any other entity or taxpayer would.
So an acquisition of a property, regardless if it's a quitclaim deed or not, falls under executive session?
The deeding mechanism that you're referencing is not the manner in which it's going to be.
I figured it's probably not, I'm just calling.
If it moves forward, there will be an actual purchase sale of the property itself, so.
It'll be a purchase sell. Okay, all right, well, no, I just wanted to check because I was wondering on that clause on executive session, and I knew they went in there in a survey. So, have you made a decision on where the pool's going, or is that something you can't talk about yet?
That's something that's still pending.
Okay, and, all right, okay, fine. I asked for, the only thing I want to make a comment on is, you continually state the financial position of the county and the strength that it's in its current date. And I do agree the financial strength of the county is much better than it was, and I do agree with that, and I want that on record, because every time I come in here, if I talk about taxes, it may be misunderstood that I don't feel the strength of the county or the financial position is different. I just want to make, just for the notes, that 12% today, property tax is up 12%. And that's A, values, and B, you've raised property tax. It's 44.
And C, growth.
Huh?
And C, growth.
Okay. Property tax is up 12%, period. 44% of the total revenue is property tax. So just, you know, I like hearing the auditor say that you have 3-month fund balance. I like hearing that. I just, again, would leave out that 1.2 million, I think, is 1 mil. It may be close to that. I could be off. And now it's up to 1.8 million a year for property tax. That's the mill was not in that number, correct, from the 44%. I just want to make sure that the bond payment property tax, because that's property tax too, that's who pays it. That's not in the 44%?
I can't say exactly, but I think he was speaking of just general fund.
Right, so that, although that's paid from property tax, 1.5 mil for the bond payment, you're not sure that that's in the 44% of the total revenue?
I think the 44% was based on general fund.
Just clear property tax?
And that 1.5 is.
Over and above?
Right.
All right, thank you, I appreciate it. No, that's it.
Anybody else? If not, we do have a request for executive session. And I would make a motion at this time that we go into executive session with no action anticipated.
No action?
No action.
All right, thank you, Chip.
Second. Sorry.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you, folks.
I don't want to.
Thank you.
Well, just our discussion, the comments that he mentioned have been fixed. They've been corrected already. The SPOS thing was a timing issue because I was,
Right.
the SPOS comes in